He's got an artificial background.
Welcome. I'd like to call the November 5th, 2020 West Sacramento Planning Commission meeting to order. Thank you for joining us this evening. We continue to meet via teleconference pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N2920, by which members of the Planning Commission and staff are participating via live video conference to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Members of the public have been invited to watch the meeting on Wave Cable on our local channel 20 or streaming online through the city's website. Tonight's agenda and all agenda item materials are available on the city's website on the Planning Commission page. All public comments submitted by 5 p.m. via email to the Planning Commission clerk are available for consideration and are posted on the city's website, along with the agenda and the link to this live streaming video, so that all planning commissioners and community members can see the complete text and submittal information. The Planning Commission clerk will note the commenters for each item when we get to that item. In addition to our regular procedure, we have an appeal on the agenda this evening. Appeals are unique, and as such, we will be including community comment periods via telephone for that one item. If you're on the call for this one item, please remain muted unless you're speaking. We anticipate members of the call on members of the community on the call for this one item. It's item number 3. To mute or unmute yourself, you can use *6 if you don't have a mute function on your phone. So with that, we will proceed with tonight's agenda. First up is presentation by the public on matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the commission. Let me get to that one item. There was one comment from, sorry, my eyesight, Sherry Carinci, related to the Black Pine Community Development and the Harriet Lane Community regarding project elements. This item is not before us tonight. I do expect we'll be seeing it in the somewhat near future, but don't anticipate or should not be discussing this evening. Mr. Tilley, did you want to add anything on that one, or Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, just that staff has communicated with that resident regarding the matter that she raised, and we'll continue to have dialogue on it as needed.
Okay. Next, under General Administration Function Part 1B, Correspondence and Staff Communications from the Planning Commissioner Secretary, Mr. Tilley.
Yes, just a reminder to all of the commissioners that the city is currently seeking applications to continue to serve on various city commissions, including the Planning Commission. So I encourage everyone to get their applications in as soon as possible, should you wish to continue serving on the Planning Commission for the next 2 years.
Okay. Next item is C, disclosure of ex parte communications. At this time, planning commissioners should disclose any communications they've had on the agenda item at this time. I would like to note that if you've had communications for anything on item number 3, we will be revisiting that in detail once we get to that item. So just please speak up. I don't want to go around the entire commission. Okay, hearing none, I will disclose that I've had conversations or a conversation with members of the community near and related to item number 3. And I'll discuss and disclose in more detail when we get to that item. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, consideration and approval of the minutes from the October 15th, 2020 commission meeting.
Shirley, we got to move approval of the minutes from the meeting on October 15th.
Moved by Vice Chair Austin.
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Berliner. Mr. Clerk, will you please do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Austin?
Aye.
Commissioner Berliner?
Aye.
Commissioner Vu?
Aye.
Commissioner Leonard?
Aye.
Commissioner Sablon?
Aye.
Chair Liebig?
Aye.
And I'm on to Commissioner Castillo's just got on and I'm on aye.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Glad you got on. Thank you for joining us. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to the regular agenda. The first item under the regular agenda is number 3, public hearing regarding the appeal of the Community Development Director's design review approval of the Linden Point mixed-use project at 3101 Allen Avenue. Before we get started on this one, sorry, I need to get up to my notes on this one. I'm going to introduce our process for this one since it's a little bit different. As soon as I get my agenda item up for this one. So there is a very specific procedure for appeals. Unlike other planning commission hearings, we're also going to be hearing from community members who wish to comment on this item via telephone. There will be a set time. So if you are on the phone right now listening in, there will be a set time for public comment. I will clearly identify it when we get to it. Just a heads up, prior to public comment is a staff report and a presentation by the appellant, as well as a presentation by the applicant. And each of those could take up to about 10 minutes. So the public comment period could be 20 or 30 minutes out, roughly. I'm going to read the city policy per the city policy. I'll highlight key points such as time limits. I'll generally repeat each step when we get there just as a reminder of where we are in the process as we proceed. We're all used to virtual meetings by now. However, this is a unique meeting because it's an appeal. We have call-in participation. So we have community members on the line in addition to written comments. I'll do my best to take it slow and allow everyone who wishes to speak an opportunity. With that, actually before that, I just want to remind any individuals on the phone, if you wish to mute or unmute, you can use *6, unless you have a fancy phone that you can push mute on. So with that, I'm going to open the public hearing and go to the city policy. I'm going to just straight read the city policy on this. So Municipal Code section 1.08.060 established appeal hearing procedures and required development of a policy for same. That policy, which is 3A3, requires myself to read a summary of the procedures into the record. The following is this summary to be read for hearings before commissions and the hearing officer. So I will open the hearing. I will ask members of the commission or the board to publicly announce any testimony or evidence received outside of the hearing process, for example, ex parte communications. I will ask members of the commission to announce any conflicts or financial interest with a material effect and that commissioners should disqualify him or herself. I will specify the time for the appellant and applicant, if applicable, for presentation and rebuttal. That is going to be 10 minutes, by the way, each. Staff will present the staff report, place relevant documents in the record, and respond to questions from the body hearing the appeal. Staff may present any testimony and relevant evidence not previously presented in the written report. Evidence is relevant if it proves or disproves a material fact in dispute. The appellant will present testimony and relevant evidence. Evidence is relevant if it proves or disproves a material fact in dispute. The applicant, if applicable, will present testimony and relevant evidence. Evidence is relevant if it proves or disproves a material fact in dispute. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to present testimony. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. The appellant and or applicant will have an opportunity to respond to testimony or evidence, but may not introduce new testimony or evidence or restate direct testimony. Staff may provide responses to testimony received from the applicant, the appellant or public, and may be asked to answer questions from the commission. I will close the public hearing and the Planning Commission will deliberate on the matter and adopt findings if appropriate. The final decision may be deferred for preparation of draft findings consistent with a preliminary decision. That is the policy. So going back up to it, I have opened the hearing. And as I mentioned, we're going to revisit disclosure of ex parte communication. I was the only one that spoke up. Francisco, if you did miss this step, it's a repeat of the ex parte communication. I had one in-person conversation with a resident of the neighborhood near item number 3. The resident was not as much in favor or not in favor of the project, but mostly interested in safety improvements regarding lighting and pedestrian transportation on the corner of Allen and Linden. Any other? Okay. Seeing none, moving on. So I'm going to, before we hand it over to the staff report, because of COVID, we typically acknowledge any written comments that have been received. So Mr. Clerk, have there been comments received on this item?
Yes, we received 3 comments. I believe some people are on the phone call, are on the call tonight.
Okay, thank you. You know, when you do that, you take up my entire screen. There we go. And I lose what I'm doing. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Allen for the staff report.
Good evening, Chair Liebig and members of the commission. This item is an appeal of the community director's approval of the design of the Linden Point mixed-use project. The project includes 6 live-work units, 2 commercial ground floor units, and 8 apartment units. The project ranges from 3 to 5 stories in height. It should be noted that the project in and of itself is a conforming use in the commercial zone, and the only item that is actually a discretionary review is the design itself. The project was submitted to the city in January 2019. During the majority of 2019, staff worked with the applicant on various corrections regarding the design of the project. It actually went through several rounds of corrections. In January of this year, a notice was sent to the surrounding property owners within 500 feet, as is city policy. Staff did receive comments from 13 residents on the project. Staff did review the comments received, and after doing so, made a recommendation to the Community Development Director regarding approval of the project. Due to COVID-19, this project was actually stalled for several months due to City Hall closures, suspension of public meetings, etc. The actual approval notice went out to the applicant in July. And that same notice was mailed to all of the residents who responded to the original notice back in January. The appellant appealed the project on July 27th after a review by city staff on how the appeal would be handled during these COVID times. It was scheduled for tonight's hearing. I'm going to take you through the appellant's comments one by one and give you staff's opinions on them. The appellant's arguments are in several different categories, the first of which has to do with environmental issues. Their first comment had to do with the potential for endangered species to utilize the site. This project is exempt from CEQA due to the fact it's a discretionary project. Also, it should be noted that when we updated general plan, an environmental impact report was prepared, and in that EIR, it identified the subject property as urban land. Also, the Yolo County Habitat Conservancy also identifies that parcel as urban land without species of concern. Next, the applicant was concerned, or the appellant was concerned due to no traffic study being conducted. The project is a permitted use in the zone in which it is located, and as such is not required to prepare a traffic study. Also, the appellant, argues that there's too much parking on the site and that there should be more use of multimodal transportation, and also that the ingress egress will increase traffic and disturb neighborhood residents. Parking for this project is provided in accordance with the number of spaces required in the zoning code for a project of its size. The ingress and egress for the project will be reviewed by development engineering, and it was found to be adequate for the project. The EIR for the general plan did analyze traffic comprehensively for the city and did have a traffic study prepared for that. Linden is considered a minor collector street and Jefferson is a major collector. The appellant's next bullet points had to do with the aesthetics of the project. The first is that the design does not fit the look of the neighborhood and is cheap looking and industrial looking. And aesthetic judgments tend to be inherently subjective. The design review administrator concluded that the design of this project complies with all applicable standards typically used to assess design quality. The applicant did work with city staff on the design to produce a project that had quite a bit of visual interest to it. The modernist architect style does provide varying materials and colors to add aesthetic variety. The roof line is varied to give it less of a mono look. The balconies on the project are on the rear side for all the residential units, and that will help maintain privacy. The appellant discussed the carports, which are also have solar arrays on them and was concerned that the quality of them could deteriorate and cause them to look bad in short order. The carports and the solar arrays will have to be maintained frequently so that the solar panels remain functioning. Their structures are located at the rear of the project site, which does minimize visibility from Linden. However, they will be visible probably from the Allen side. The final thing in this section had to do with requests for an aesthetically pleasing wall with foliage along the Allen Avenue side. The appellant felt this would be a nice compromise. The current city ordinance do not require the applicant to construct such a structure. However, should the developer choose to do so, he could do this recommendation voluntarily. The maximum wall height in a commercial zone is 8 feet tall. So even with a wall, the majority of the project site would be visible to the existing residents. And finally, the applicant requested a sidewalk be constructed along the entire length of Allen. And there was a comment that the sidewalk had minimal or no landscaping. The applicant can only be required to provide public improvements along their frontage. And because of that, the applicant cannot be required to provide additional sidewalks along the length of Allen. The project does have street trees and landscaping, which will be present in the adjacent areas along both Linden and Allen. And there will be a meandering sidewalk along the landscape area. The appellant states that the 3 to 5 story buildings are too tall for the area where the homes are only 1 to 2 stories tall. The project is located on a parcel that is zoned commercial. It has been zoned commercial for many years, and the maximum height in that zoning district is 65 feet. The applicant's project is actually a maximum height of 54 feet, so the height is conforming for the zone in which it is in. And the appellant pointed out that the neighbors across the street from the project may end up having sunshine blocked from their homes due to the taller buildings, and that solar panels on the existing homes may not work. The project site is actually located east of the existing residence. And although the project might shade the residents early in the day, shadows should actually fall in the opposite direction from the residents in the afternoon and the evening due to the fact that the sun will be in the west at that time. Because of that, the shadows really shouldn't have a significant effect on the existing residences or the solar panels or future solar panels. The appellant went on to have several comments regarding safety and maintenance at the project site. The appellant expressed concerns with the project being dangerous to children due to increased traffic at the project site. The project site does have 2 areas of ingress and egress and has been zoned for this type of development for many years. There are adjacent projects that are also commercial developments such as Tower Mart which was constructed, excuse me, over 20 years ago. And staff is not aware with projects such as those as having had issues with safety, and we do not feel that this project would as well. The appellant asked about issues such as the security of the project, pest control for the project, and site maintenance. And those issues are all outside the purview of design review for the project. The appellant also asked regarding what kind of electrical systems would be used. Those will be reviewed at the time of plan check for the project and will be designed to meet the city's standard specifications for electrical systems. The appellant asked about lighting and was concerned about potential light and glare on neighboring properties. The project will be required to produce a photometric plan for the project, which will evaluate the levels of light coming from the project and extending out from the project site. It will be required to meet the lighting standards of the Illuminating Engineers Society for North America. Also, the lighting fixtures will be required to be shielded so that light basically stays on the property side and does not extend out to where it would be an annoyance to neighboring residents. The appellant was concerned with the potential for homeless issues at the project site. The project will be reviewed under the Crime Prevention through Environmental Design, or CPTED review, as part of the plan check process, and any features that may facilitate trespassing on the property will be addressed at that time. The appellant expressed concerns about the zero setbacks. Actually, the project could be built at zero setbacks, but it is not. The setbacks are actually 20 feet in the front, 15 feet on the street side, 8 feet on the side, and 15 feet in the rear. And the appellant is concerned about privacy and the residents of the apartments being able to view into the private homes. The project fronts on Linden, and the backside of the project is where the project balconies are. They're at a side angle from the existing residence and should cause only minor issues at best in terms of being able to see into private residence, mainly due to the distance from those residents. The appellant asked about economic feasibility of the project and inquired about how live-work lofts would work in a suburban type neighborhood, and concerns about business failures due to COVID, etc. The proposed uses for this project are all permitted uses within the commercial zone. The city's design review process only evaluates compliance with applicable city land use codes and does not include an assessment or representative of economic feasibility of the project. Those are decisions that will have to be borne by the developer. I would also like to discuss some of the comments that came out of the neighbor letters for the project. The One was that the design is not compatible with the surrounding community or the surrounding residential neighborhoods. That those are designed in a Spanish Mediterranean style in soft earth tone colors. And that because of that, the design is not compatible with the neighborhood. Each design review project is reviewed separately, and not all commercial buildings that have been reviewed have had a Spanish Mediterranean style to them. One example of that is actually the business next door to this project, the Power Mart, which is not designed in that type of style. The project does use neutral colors from a palette shade of mainly grays with some black accents. The project is a commercial project, and as such is definitely larger than the surrounding properties, but the massing and height are compatible with the standards in the zoning code for a commercial project in the zone in which it's located in. Our specific plan at this point is over 25 years old, and it should be noted that design best practices have changed pretty substantially since the time that document was produced. The project, another comment from the neighbors is that the project does not meet the criteria for a retail center enumerated in the design guidelines, and that it does not have a plaza or a drop-off area. This project really doesn't fit any of the design criteria for a commercial center due to its small size. It's kind of a tweener, for lack of a better word. Staff in reviewing it did use planning best practices when evaluating it. If we had just said that we can't evaluate it at all because it doesn't fit into any of the boxes, it could have potentially been represented as a taking. And as such, we chose to evaluate it using best practices. It does indeed have a plaza area. That was one of the areas of correction during the review of the project. That plaza area is located between the buildings and the parking area. And in terms of a drop-off area, the project is relatively small and has adequate parking, and the existing parking spaces would meet the standards for a drop-off area. Another comment had to do with the trees proposed for the project. One of the comments took issue to the fact that maple trees were used and considered a poor choice for the project due to the fact that they drop leaves and can potentially crack sidewalk. When we reviewed the landscaping in terms of trees, we look at the city's master tree list when looking at what trees are appropriate. Our master tree list does list several varieties of maple trees, including the ones that are used on the project site. And as such, that is why we made no changes to the trees. Another comment had to do that the project requires a transit facility. Staff would like to note that YOLO Bus 35 does go down Linden and Jefferson, and there is a bus stop close to the project site. Since the specific plan was adopted, much has changed regarding transit facilities. YOLO Bus in recent years has actually been cutting routes within the city. And so if a transit facility was produced, it has the potential to be unused. And that is why we did not require one of the project. And final comment had to do with the lack of a tower element. As we mentioned previously, this project really doesn't fit into any of the categories for commercial centers. And due to the project's overall small size, that was one reason why we did not require a tower to be added to it. It does contain varying roof levels to give it some visual interest. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions now or later. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. So where we are in the process is, so we just heard staff report. The next step is actually hearing from the appellant, Ms. Hicks. Ms. Hicks will have approximately or up to 10 minutes. Certainly does not mean you need to take the full 10 minutes, but you have up to 10 minutes to present testimony and evidence in conformity with Chapter 1.08 of the Municipal Code. And then following Ms. Hicks, the applicant has an opportunity to also present equally up to 10 minutes. This is certainly not required, but an opportunity. And then following the appellant and the applicant's presentation, we will be hearing any public comments or testimonies by the members of the public. At that point, individuals that are on the phone will be asked if they would like to provide comment. And then, of course, following that, we can hear from the appellant and the applicant again to respond to evidence or testimony, and then staff can respond to testimony and answer additional questions. So rather than kicking it back to staff right now, I'd like to move on with the appellant's presentation and hand it over to Ms. Hicks.
Thank you. I want to thank you everyone for attending or the opportunity to speak. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, my name was Lee Provost forever, and I just recently got married, so I'm going by Leanne Hicks. And I want to thank Kathy Allen for her professionalism and for addressing all of our concerns. That was kind of her and due diligence. So thank you, Kathy, because you really did pretty much summarize all of our concerns. I would like to urge the Planning Commission to read everything that's been submitted. Now, Kathy put together a really good report. It has mine and other people's concerns. Please read through all that. And before I get started, I just want to say that I urge the Planning Commission to not adopt this design and not to go forward with this project today. And also the city attorney to please consider that there's a lot of people that are upset about this. I have 46 signatures against this. And we really do feel as a community that, we were, what's a nice way to put it? We were not really told about this project in the proper way. 500 feet away is the only people that were notified. I live farther than 500 feet away, but I found out from another neighbor. So I am speaking for a lot of neighbors here that are very concerned. So I'm going to go through quickly my concerns here. Of course, number one is safety concerns. The children riding their bicycles, walking, the cars, the pedestrians, the traffic, and then also security concerns. So all of the neighbors have told me that they really, really, really want a traffic study. So please, we would like a traffic study. It's very important to us. It seems like, I don't know how to put it in a nice way, but it just seems like that was kind of skimmed over. And there's a lot of us who's, even though during COVID, you know, I still have to pass by that corner every day if I have to go somewhere. Poor aesthetics, that was brought up. A lot of people are upset about that. The architecture or the lack of architecture. Now, these proposal looks very similar to the Foundry over there by Bridge Street, by the freeway, over there by the barn in West Sacramento. It just looks horrible, and it doesn't match with our neighborhood. Unsightly carports, that was brought up a little bit. Just, you know, carports after a while, they just deteriorate. I mean, you just go to older apartment complexes and you'll see how terrible carports look after a while. And then, of course, we're very upset with the multi-story. There was something brought up about, the balconies are going to be facing a different way. Well, people can still look through their windows at us. Let's see. So please read what Liz Corrett wrote. She's very specific about her design concerns. Please look at what other people wrote other than just myself. It's included in this whole document here. I think there's like 71 pages. Now, there's a disregard for the environmental impacts, including endangered species. I wrote that up. And I think, you know, we're not architects, you know, we're not attorneys, you know, we're not planners. We're just community people that have to drive by and look at this and deal with this for the rest of our lives, because most of us can't afford or don't want to move from our neighborhood. We love our neighborhood. And it says it's discretionary CEQA. I kind of looked up some of that stuff and, you know, on Westlaw, and then, you know, I'm not an attorney, but discretionary is like what it says. It's just up to you all if you decide you want to do it or not, and you decided you don't want to do it. Well, we have identified an endangered species. So on that respect, kind of thinking about the critters and the animals, when you start doing the construction, a lot of the gophers or the snakes or the little rodents and stuff, they're going to be just running across the road and trying to get into other people's houses. Plus, one of the neighbors has asthma and their child has asthma. So when you start this construction, there's going to be a lot of dust. And so they're really concerned about how you're going to handle the dust control. Also, there's a really concerned about dewatering, which has not been brought up in this, but anybody who knows that lived here any while, it used to be all farmland here, and the water table is like it's less than 10 feet down, maybe 8 feet down, 6 feet. So you're going to have to, what happened? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, we
okay.
can hear you. It
And for
looks
some
like
reason,
the
the whole
timer
it
got
just said, I only have 5 minutes left to speak. That's weird. You let Kathy Allen speak forever. I have a little less than 5 minutes to speak. Thank you. Okay. The dewatering, what are you going to do with all that water that you're going to have to pump out? We had a project down the street close to where I live on Allen, and the guy's been digging a ditch for a whole year. And you guys just let it go on. I don't see the city people over there too often doing any kind of inspection, and you just let it go on. I mean, how long is this going to go on? This is a guy that just built a house, and he's been digging a ditch for a whole year. So we're really concerned about that. We really just feel misled because we were told when we bought these houses that it was just going to be 1 to 2 story homes, and that along Allen is a strip of homes, and then behind that's commercial. So we feel really duped or misled because we never knew it got rezoned. Also, if you try to call the phone number on that sign that's out there, nobody knows anything. We find that's kind of disconcerting. No CEQA, no traffic plans. We're concerned about that. And then, another big concern for me is a lack of community needs. Now, they have Town Center Plaza, right? That's over on Jefferson and Lake Washington Boulevard. It's called a plaza, but there's no plaza. Why can't we have something like that built over here? Maybe have a central plaza with a fountain where people can sit around the fountain and people can gather, have a community center maybe with some rooms that you can rent to have community events, someplace where the young people can go and the older people. we don't have that here in West Sacramento. So just a complete disregard of the community needs just for profit. And that's what we're really upset about. And then we just have a problem that it's a commercial project. I've got about 3 minutes left.
Ms. Hicks,
Okay, you're taking up my time. Okay, go ahead.
You can have more minutes.
Oh, well, I'm going to try to keep it to 10. Thank you. Yeah, we're just really concerned with the migratory birds not being addressed. We're concerned with, the entrance and exit on Allen Avenue. That's not good. Just have the people go in and out of Linden. I mean, there's so many kids that are riding their bicycles now, and they like to go over and get candy and sodas and stuff over at Power Mart, and they're riding their bikes and stuff. We're just really concerned about the kids and the, what do they call it, egress and ingress, or the exit and entrance. They're coming in and out of Allen Avenue. We really, really don't like that, the circulation of that. And, you know, Jefferson Boulevard is a major collector, and that's where Power Mart now, lets out. The traffic comes in and out of there. So don't compare this commercial thing with Power Mart, because that's going to a major arterial, and we're like a little neighborhood, you know, so we're really concerned about that. Of course, so just to sum up, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I'm just looking through my notes. Oh, sidewalks. For some reason, on one side of Allen, no sidewalks at all, but sidewalks on the other. So what do people do? If they're walking on the one side, it's like they just walk in the street. You know, they're walking their dog, the kids are riding their bicycles, or the moms were pushing their strollers and stuff. So we're really concerned that there's going to be people whipping in and out of there all the time. And there's no sidewalk. There's not going to be any kind of sidewalk provided or anything like that. Really concerned about that. And I'm sure I forgot something, and I'm hoping my neighbors that are going to talk will bring up my concerns, but I don't remember. Did I bring up about privacy, that people can look through the windows into our property? And then the other thing is, some people have solar panels on their house, and I just saw how the sun can get blocked by multi-story, because I was over there by the Ziggurat building, and they're building a new like 5-story parking garage. Why they're building a parking garage, I don't get it. Anyway, in the morning, that sun blocks all the way across the street into those people's yards, and they have like beautiful gardens and stuff. So, you know, Kathy did address that, but she was saying, oh yeah, you're not going to get it in the morning. You're not going to get the sun in the morning, but you'll get it in the afternoon. But that's not where the solar panels are towards the morning sun. So a lot of people are upset about, you know, it's going to be blocking the sun. The zero setback, again, you know, we're not architects or anything, just looking at the plans, which, by the way, are very difficult to look at because, I mean, we don't have a full set of plans. We're just kind of trying to look at it on a computer screen. It's super tiny and all that. So then looking at some of the, the quantities or whatever, it looked like it said zero, like there was nothing. And so I know Kathy addressed that, but still 8 feet, that's nothing. And then again, we're just really concerned with the ugliness of the whole project. And we would like to see some sort of compromise from the developer, some sort of compromise to make it aesthetically better for us. I would really appreciate that. So in closing, again, I want to thank you so much for your time, for your professionalism, for allowing me to speak. You know, we're pretty upset about this, and we feel like we would like for this to be delayed to where maybe there's more of a compromise can be made. There's a lot of people that have signed a petition. Oh, one other thing is I did put in a request to the clerk and I believe to the mayor, the city clerk, that we would like to be heard at a city council meeting because Christopher Baldwin has responded to us, which thank you, but he says he won't really listen to us unless we're on a city council meeting. So this is like all planning commission stuff. So we would like to, I would like to request here also, since I didn't get a response to my email, that we would like to be heard at a city council meeting. And I think that's it. I think that summarizes all of my concerns. I'm sure I forgot something, but I'm sure one of my neighbors will bring it up. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hicks. And I just muted another person. I apologize about that. We were getting a lot of feedback coming in there. I'll watch the clock going forward a little bit more. I wasn't tracking as closely on that one. So, but thank you for keeping your comments concise. I took 12 minutes since you said I had it, so I took 12 minutes. Thank you. You will have an opportunity to respond again, and we'll just keep taking this on order. And then also I'll go over the process at the end, because regardless of where we are right now, this doesn't go to council only because of the appellate process. So this is the decision-making body for this one.
Well, we still want to be heard by the city council. So if there's anyone that you guys that work for the city can tell us how we can get scheduled on a city council meeting. This is a concerned citizen. That's what we want to do. We haven't gotten a response back, and I'm a little concerned why that's being avoided. Okay, thank you.
I'll ask our council at the follow-up of this item, Mr. Boer, if you can provide some guidance on this. There are always opportunities to speak at council, even without having something on the agenda. I'm sorry, I need to rephrase that. There was always possibility to comment for city council. Okay, so next we're going to move to the applicant's presentation, if there is one. If you can, please introduce yourself. And I know I let the appellant go a little over, so if you could please keep yours to approximately the same time frame, that would be very appreciated. We have most likely several people that also want to talk this evening, and this is a lengthy process. So.
Good evening, everyone, planning commissioners, City of West Sacramento staff, and neighbors and residents around the project. My name is Samir Hijazi, and I am the project designer and representing the applicant tonight. I want to thank Kathy and city staff for putting together the report, which looked very concise and comprehensive. And I would like to say that we have worked very hard with city staff to come up with the final development plans that everyone has probably have seen already. Generally speaking, I really want to speak about the attributes of the project more than anything else, as staff has put together enough information to describe the project and the process that we went through, and conformity to the zoning ordinance and other ordinances within the city of West Sacramento. Our proposal is all by right. In other words, there is nothing discretionary about what we did or what we were required to do. So this is to be, to be taken into consideration. The second thing is that I wanted to talk about is the mixed-use type project and the size of the project that we have, even in relationship to a mixed-use project. Generally speaking, mixed-use projects are really much bigger than what we have presented here. They're in the, probably hundreds of units. This is really a small project by all standards. Its impact is very low. It is only 14 units. 6 of the units are live work, and the other 8 are what's considered stacked flats is what we call them. The project is mixed use, meaning that it has a commercial component and it has a residential component. The objective of such projects, and these kind of projects are all over the United States and in the world, actually. The objective of them is to really marry the residential aspect of living with the commercial aspect by patronizing the commercial use and creating a relationship between residential and commercial that is convenient and provides for less traffic, believe it or not. So I heard a lot about traffic and how this project is going to increase traffic. I can tell you it is completely the opposite for multiple reasons. The first one is that the project is small. In other words, 16 units. The second reason is that the project has a commercial component to it. So naturally, because of convenience, residents are going to be using such businesses. So that's a reduction on trip count. The third thing is about such projects that they tend to be a project of this size because it's small. It's really part of the community, and it is on a commercial, the commercial side of the area which it lies in. A mixed-use project is going to be the least of impact upon the neighboring properties. And I can give you just a quick example. Suppose, and this is allowed in that zone, a couple of restaurants come in with drive-throughs. Believe me, you're not going to like it because you're going to get hundreds of trips. A project of this size of 16 units is really a minimal impact upon the trip count coming into and out of the project. The fourth component that speaks for this project, that it's live work. I guess we have, all of us, not only in California or West Sacramento, the entire world, we have been working out of our own homes. And the period that just passed through the COVID that we have been experiencing, just like tonight, all of us are either, most of you are out of your homes, except myself. I'm out of my office just because I have to have access to a lot of material. But such a project speaks volumes to how the future is going to be. Mixed use is good. Work-live is excellent because here we are providing an opportunity for people who can work out of their homes, but yet have a dedicated space to work out of. Also, as a work-live, there will be a lot of services that may be offered to the community. The type of homeowner that might come in could be an attorney, could be an architect, could be a real estate agent, an accounting, an accountant, a tax man, woman, whatever you think, is whatever anybody that works in the community would benefit from. We're also looking at the type of client that may be even a government employee that goes into consulting after after they end their government type job. So the makeup of the community, the thought behind the mixed use, and the thought behind the work-live is really speaks volumes to what's been happening and where we're going. I've also heard comments regarding the how the setbacks are inadequate. And Kathy, thankfully, she gave us setbacks. She actually quoted setbacks between planters and property lines. The actual setback, I'm going to give you the actual setbacks, building to property line, except for the front, which, you know, Kathy said it was 20 feet. This one side which is from the Power Mart to the project, is 47 feet. That's the actual setback to building, okay? The narrowest setback closest to Allen Avenue and the property line, in other words, would be, you know, looking south, that is 70 feet. Okay, the setback between the 5-level component of the project to the rear setback is approximately 165 feet. These are plenty setbacks for a project of this size. A lot of consideration have been given to the neighbors, contrary to the presentation that I heard. So all in all, we believe this is a good project for where it is, for what it is, and for its for all intents and purposes. It took a lot of consideration of the to the neighbors. We located the building closest to Linden Avenue and away from the rear property line, and that's out of abundance of respect to the neighbors and good design principles. As far as the aesthetics, so this is a modern design. I understand some people are going to like it and some people aren't going to like it. It's just like everything. This is a subjective matter. Some people like, you know, beige and others like blue. Again, this is a subjective matter. Massing is adequate by all design standards. The elevations are extremely rich. They offer multiple materials that are borrowed and brought from the design standards in the city. And it is not that unusual to be in the city of Sacramento. I've driven the city of Sacramento, West Sacramento plenty, and I have seen projects of this caliber and this design, and having these design elements. So it is the way of the future too, because just because, you know, we're used to something, it doesn't mean that anything new should be bad, based on what I heard. So we're excited about it. We're hoping that we continue to take it to the next phase and look forward to working with the neighbors and respecting everybody's rights, as this is a property right and it is within all the published zoning ordinances. One more comment, just, and I know Kathy said we're not required to provide sidewalk on Allen Avenue, but as a matter of fact, we did. So if you do look at the site plan, you are going to find that on our side of the development, we've extended the sidewalk to the Allen Avenue. Also, I heard comments about, you know, 2 entrances, and that's not good. We make decisions not based on good and bad. We make decisions based on code. The fire department will require us to have an entrance and an exit for the fire truck to be able to get it onto the property and out of the property without having to go back and, or let's say safely. So that is in there. A gathering area has been provided on the project, and it's, believe it or not, it's about 2,600 square feet for such a small size of a project. I think that's more or less.
If you could, we've gone over 10 and we're up now hitting 12. If you could please wrap up your.
I'm in the interest. Yes, thank you very much. In the interest of time, I will stop here and answer any questions later on in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, there will be more opportunities to response feedback. But I do want to move on. I know there are members of the community who are also wanting to chime in and provide comment. This is a unique meeting for us. We don't typically have phone call-in users, and this is the first time where we're having actual members of the community on our Zoom meeting as well. I do have 2 requests to speak that came through Zoom chat. I have Christine Roloff and a Sarah Wampler. I'm going to take those 2 first as I've already identified those. And then after those 2, I will request any additional members of the community who wish to make a comment. At that point, just unmute yourself. We will hold public comment to 3 minutes each, to give everyone a chance to speak. We're clearly working on our time clock here, and I will, if it doesn't come up, I will do my best to provide some guidance and give a notice, or our planning commissioner clerk will give maybe a 30-second notice, so you're able to wrap up your thoughts before being caught off guard at the end of the 3 minutes. So at this time, I would like to ask Ms. Roloff if she would like to provide any comments.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name's Christine Roloff, and I live on Pitzer Circle. And I am supportive of mixed-use projects, and I understand that we need more dense residential in our neighborhood. I was shocked that the zoning and the general plan supported 16 housing units plus commercial on less than an acre, but that's my bad. That's part of everything that's already been approved. This is aesthetically very different than our neighborhood. And although the applicant says truly that it's a very nice aesthetic design, it's nothing like our neighborhood. It's a beautiful, modern, boxy, edgy development. And it's nothing like our neighborhood. I think you all need to drive out here and look at our neighborhood. If it were designed to look more like our neighborhood, then I think, given that the general plan and the zoning already support it, we wouldn't have as much to complain about. Although I am worried about the kids in the development and the ingress egress onto Allen Avenue, because already a lot of kids going to high school come down Allen Avenue, not just from our neighborhood, but they come from the neighborhood behind us. There's like a path that goes from the neighborhood behind us and dumps onto Allen Avenue. So there's a lot of kids coming on that path to go to high school. So I'm concerned about accidents there. And I know aesthetics is subjective, but I really want you to consider just how it really blends in. It doesn't blend in at all. It would blend in probably with the housing over by the barn, which is beautiful. And I actually like modern design, but I live in the house that I live in that was built in the early 1990s. And I would like our neighborhood to not look bizarre. And if this continues, if you do not grant this appeal, this is kind of your legacy as a planning commission. Am I done? I think I'm done.
You have 30 more seconds.
Oh, it's kind of your legacy as a planning commission. People don't know all this process. I know a little bit. I'm an attorney, but I'm in law enforcement. I don't know planning stuff. But I know enough to know that when people see this, they're going to be like, what the heck happened? So just think about that, Planning Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Roloff. I have, just to give folks an idea of what I see and how I'm going to see about managing this. I really do appreciate everybody who's figuring this out as we're on kind of going and we're on the fly. That would be my timer. Apologies for that one. There are several requests that I'm getting through various channels. I'm going to work through them. I will still come back to individuals on the phone and ask if there is anyone else that we haven't received comment from that would like to make a comment. So you will have an opportunity. At this point, I've got about 8 requests to speak. Next up is Sarah Wampler, and I'm going to say on deck is Liz. Forgive me, I'm not sure it's Carrot. So Ms. Wampler.
All right. Wait. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you see me? Now. Okay. Thank you guys for granting to hear this appeal at the Planning Commission, because earlier on we thought we were already defeated and weren't being heard anymore. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are listening to us tonight. A lot of what I'm going to say is probably what you've already heard from other people, but we all kind of have the same similar concerns. So we do tend to start with the safety concerns. Allen is a residential street, but it has a lot of traffic and pedestrian and biking. So they say that in the guidelines that Allen doesn't need a sidewalk on that side, but I really disagree that I think it does, at least for the boundaries of the project. I know that everybody who buys one of those acre lots is responsible for that, but Allen is a not that wide street. And on the other side where the houses are built, they park their cars on the street, so it already narrows it. So by the time you get down to where Allen hits Linden, that stop sign, it's quite narrow with cars turning in and cars turning out and cars coming from this way. And a house is right on the corner that has, kids and stuff. So it's always, I get very nervous coming along that, but that's because I'm familiar with the neighborhood. I just think we're going to get a lot more people not familiar with the neighborhood. I just think Allen is going to need to be widened, at least where it comes up to Linden somehow, to accommodate the turning in and out and everything else there. Also, you've heard over and over the design is not fitting. It is I like the design. It's just not fitting here. It would be very groovy at a beach, kind of a beach community. They love that kind of stuff. I know that the owners of this beautiful urban design are from Southern California, which is different than Sacramento Valley. We are not near the beach, and so our architecture looks different. If we were near the river, I could kind of get away with that. That's why it looks good up there by River Cats. But it really does not look good here with all of our little houses. And by the way, when we bought in this neighborhood, it was a neighborhood that required us to follow CC&Rs, which we still are required to follow.
And that's expired?
And this project blows up all of the CC&Rs that we're supposed to follow. We can't paint our houses wild colors. We can't have
a basketball hoop in the front, for God's sakes. You can't have an RV. There's all kinds of rules to make our houses look neat and put together well and with space around them and not looking trashy. People don't put their trash out in the front. And if they do, the neighbors complain. And then the city comes and says, guess what? You're breaking a rule. So I don't understand why
Ms. Wombler, if you could wrap up your comments.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I just kind of feel like it's so close. We're having to follow rules and they don't really need to be. People live near bigger cities. They live in or near projects that have that urban look when they are in bigger cities. But people move to rural suburbs. You move to rural suburbs to be around quiet residences that are usually single family with space for yards. And that is what we have, is a rural suburb. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wombler. So next, I have Ms. Liz Carret. If you could please introduce yourself. I know I probably did not get that pronunciation correct. And then on deck, I have, speaking of not being able to get this correct, Yuri. We'll just go with that. And after that, Ranil Sharma. So Ms. Carret. Liz, you're on mute.
Yeah, how do I unmute it?
You know, she can come over here. Come on.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
She's moving over.
Can you hear me now? Are you
Yes.
there? Okay. Okay, let's start with the traffic thing, because everybody's talking about the traffic thing. Where he says that this will create less traffic because it's a community community commercial project, and that people will shop in their community. They're still going to drive there. Okay, this is not Europe. This is not San Francisco, and it's not New Orleans. People don't walk to the store, they drive. Okay, there are people who walk to Tower Mart, and the one good thing about this project is it will have a sidewalk on Linden all the way from the corner of Allen to Tower Mart, Power Mart, and that's fabulous. But neither Power Mart nor the plaza across the street empty onto a residential street. And Allen Avenue is a residential street. Now, when he brings up the fire marshal, that's important, yes, and I have no problem with having an entrance on Allen that gives the fire marshal and the fire trucks access. I don't see how it will benefit our community to have 16 more units, both commercial and residential, that are dumping vehicles onto a residential street that is their only ingress and egress to this subdivision. Okay, it's just going to create a lot of problems at that intersection, because it's so, like Sarah said, it's so close to the stop sign. Okay, then if we go to the design, this is not compatible with the neighborhood. The design is a beautiful uber urban design, okay? But it is not compatible with this area or this neighborhood. And he said he drove around West Sac and he's seen these things in West Sac. They are much closer to the downtown area. I don't know why they started those design things there, except that they like the uber urban thing. But this is not here. Okay, we have a Mediterranean style. We have nothing. There are no buildings in any of the Southport area that are over 2 stories, unless you count the tower on Power Mart, then it's 3 stories. Okay, 5 stories is way out. It's just a huge incompatibility with the area. Okay, and the privacy concerns, they're correct. There are windows on other sides, even though the balconies are not there. And as far as the commercial properties that are nearby, Power Mart is much more compatible. Even though people here didn't like Power Mart and don't care for it being there, its design is much more compatible with this neighborhood than this design. Okay, so this project would be a whole lot easier to take if it were 3 stories or less and did not allow the residents and the businesses to have egress on Allen Avenue and were designed in a more Mediterranean style. And as far as Kathy, I really appreciated your entire, you went over all of the points of my comments and I really appreciate it. But when you say there have been changes in designs and architecture and what's expected of commercial properties since these guidelines were written, then what good are the guidelines? If you can change, if y'all can, if the commission can be discretionary over the guidelines, then what good are the guidelines? Okay, because this project does not fit these guidelines. And if it's too small to fit these guidelines, then perhaps this particular acre is too small for a commercial project in this neighborhood. That's it.
I once again muted myself. Apologies, and thank you. Is it just for
Correct.
Correct. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Next up, Yuri Shako, and then on deck, Ranil Sharma. So, Yuri, and I'm sorry if I'm not getting this right. Please, if you can state your name, that would be helpful.
Good evening, everybody. You got right. Exactly last name, perfect. Yuri Shako. You got the 100% right. So anyway, so speaking about this project, I just thought about it, just developer told us it's going to be only 16 units. Look at this. We live in the United States. Every family has 2-3 cars. We're going to bring almost 50 cars in the one spot. That's additional to all traffic we have. I moved from the other side of the town, West Sacramento. I live by the Broderick, by the apartments. And you know what is living in apartments? There's a lot of traffic, a lot of people, a lot of noises. It's all the time. I know it's now gets better, under control. But only reason I moved to this place, I did research a lot. And I find out I even pay, let's put it this way, $100,000 more to move from that project to here, in order to bring my kids in a quiet neighborhood, more safe, more better to bring up my children and bring up now grandkids already, That's what I'm concerned. If we're going to put some more people right here, more traffic, what's going to happen? It's going to be we have more troubles. I did research pretty good before I bought this, property and a house to do that. And I asked, the city, they told me, yeah, it's going to be only single homes, nothing else. We're not going to build anything, not even apartments, not even fourplex, or duplex. Now it's things different. I'm just kind of wondering where those developers live. I bet you they live in a quiet neighborhood. They live in a nice place when it's really super quiet, but no problem. They're proposing us to big project. To me, if they will move us in a neighborhood right here, Pitzer, Allen, and other places right here, circles, to 3 miles away from this place, no problem. Go ahead, build it. Or move yourself 3 miles away. There's a lot of field in the back. And build your 5-story project with commercial buildings, no problem. That's what my idea. Thank you so much, commissioners, for putting together and listening to us.
Thank you, Mr. Shako. Ranil Sharma, and then Rondell Dharma.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chairman. I believe Rondell was actually misspelled. That would have been me.
That was who? Oh, that was you?
Yeah, the Rondell Dharma that you're seeing, I think that's me. I think that was just misspelled in my name. That's all.
I'll double check after you, but feel free to go ahead.
Okay. Well, in that case, to the chairman of the commission, to the board, I want to thank you guys for taking the time out to actually listen to the community. That is very, very helpful. To put this in perspective, I do want the entire board to acknowledge that this property, that this building, this project that's being built is directly in front of my house. It affects me. It affects my family. It affects my kids, The stories that you hear about everybody talking about the kids playing outside, those are my kids. The fact that the traffic coming in and out of the street affects me, my driveway, because exit right in front of my driveway. You're talking about a property that's going to be built with, and Alex actually brought this up already, but you're talking about a property that's going to be accommodating 18 with ingress of 18 with the 16 story. Well, that 16 is only counting, and you can't limit down a family to saying that they can only down to one vehicle. Every family, every average family actually has 2 cars. So that's 13, that's 32 units for 18 parking lot that'll be parking down the street. And as Liz, as my neighbors actually made a comment, that when we have parking in the side of Allen, and as the exit to Allen, and if we have cars parked on the side, that decreases the entire size of Allen already. In all those cars coming in and out and attracting nothing but bad crimes, or basically bad, even homelessness. The bad environment that will attract is something that I don't want my kids to grow up to see. The privacy that I lose, me specifically, because of the fact that you have I have a 5-story house, 5-story building right in front of me, peeking at in my backyard. I don't need that. I'm sorry, but and to the builder, would you like to have this built in front of your house? To everybody else that's commissioning, to everybody else, the commission, to the chairman, I am asking you this: how would you feel if you had an apartment building going in front of your house? Because that is how I'm feeling right now. It affects my neighbor. And about the solar being affected, yes, it does affect it. It doesn't affect it a lot, but when we actually do our solar bid, when we were planning our solar, when we built our solar on top of my house, I actually calculated the amount of energy that I will be creating throughout the entire point of the day. From the west sun coming up, the amount of energy that I will be creating is dependent on how the location of the building is. That building, okay, I'll be very quick. That building is going to affect my morning production. It is going to affect my morning production, and it is going to devalue of what I'm supposed to be creating and how much energy I am supposed to be making. The building, the solars are actually tilted towards the sunrise, nothing towards the backside of the house where the sunset doesn't affect it any. So my main production is only in the morning, which that building will affect.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Can I confirm that there is, in fact, no Mr. Dharma on the call? I do see it now. I believe it was likely a typo, entering twice. Okay.
I say yes. Can I go second round?
Unlike the other camera where we just have people rotating through. Next up, I have Alex P. And I apologize, I don't have your last name. If you could please introduce yourself so we have your name for the record.
Yes, it is Alex P. And I appreciate this opportunity for hearing us out. Thank you for listening to us and for making this possible. I just want to mention that I live in this area since 1996 and desire to continue to live in this area. It is a wonderful place. Really love Southport. West Sacramento in general is a great place. I've seen it evolve drastically since 96. So in regards to the design, this design does not belong in the Southport area. West Sacramento, yes, but there's many areas, just like previously stated by others before me. This would definitely fit somewhere, Raleigh Field, Riverwalk, but not in Southport. And I really like the point that, you know, the designer, the builders, those that wish this project to go forward, if you guys, wherever you live, would you want this built right across from you and you have to drive and see this and deal with the traffic coming in and out? You know, put yourself in our shoes. That is a really, really good point, because that's something we're going to have to deal with for the rest of our lives if we choose to live here, and which so far I am planning to. So that being said, this does not belong, this design, this apartment complex, this does not belong in this area. You guys have to reconsider, please. And you guys have to do something that's more fitting for our area. The other thing is, I personally spoke with most of the neighbors here, face to face. I went door to door. I spent hours. I took hours away from my newborn son that I could have spent with my family. And I talked to all the neighbors. I was surprised to find out that almost all of them, except for a few neighbors that were unsure about the project, they needed to look it up and do a little bit more research, but almost all of them, down to the last one, were in opposition to this project. So please consider that. Cars parked on the side of the street. So when cars are parked on the side, beside the sidewalk, and let's say there's oncoming traffic and I'm going one way and someone's coming the opposite way, I have to almost go off to the side and slow down to let them pass. So if we're going to have a sidewalk, and let alone if there's going to be another car parked by that sidewalk, there's just no way. It's going to be impossible. Yes. So that now picture Christmas Day, Independence Day, Thanksgiving, family dinners. Most families have a minimum of 2 cars. That's minimum. Here in America, every single family member, if they're able to drive, they own a car. So we're talking anywhere from 2 to 4 cars to maybe 5 cars. So imagine those days, Christmas days, Independence Day, people are going to have friends over. And what does that mean? That means that there's going to be insufficient parking provided in the apartment complex, which means that all our streets are going to be packed with cars. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Those are all the names that I've received through the chat function. So at this point, I would like to open it up to members of the public on the phone. Yes. Phone number is 0890, last 4.
Hello, can I speak?
Yes.
Oh, my name is Robert Renner.
Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Robert Renner. I live at the end of Allen Avenue, and I am 100% dead set against this project. Like a lot of the other neighbors have stated, toward the entrance of Linden Road, when you're coming off of Allen, it's real narrow. Cars park on each side of the street, and I definitely have to slow down and get way over to the right. I don't see how they could possibly even put a sidewalk there at the way that the intersection is stated. The other problem is that Linden Road is just one lane. So the cars that are coming down Linden toward Jefferson, when I go to turn right on Allen Avenue to head toward Jefferson, I have to stop and wait for the cars to come by that are heading toward Jefferson already. It didn't used to be too bad because Linden used to be 2 lanes. But now that Linden is 1 lane, I find myself having to wait for cars to come. If you're adding more units there and more cars there, it's be a disaster. Plus, there's a child care facility right across the street. And I see parents walk their kids to that school across Linden Road, and it's dangerous as it is now for them. If you're going to add 16 units plus I don't know how many cars plus the businesses, it's just, that's just way too much traffic. Other thing I was upset about, I never received even a first notice that this was occurring. I found out from a neighbor that this is, that what was going on, and I wondered how many other neighbors didn't have an idea this was going on. What I would like to touch on also, that I've lived here for almost 20 years, and part of the reason I moved here was because there was no apartments, because they wanted to live among all just houses and do the family living. That's one of the reasons why. May I touch also on the Power Mart, I should say. Power Mart faces Jefferson Boulevard. So we can't see the style of Power Mart, even though it may not fit our neighborhood, but it's not visible to our eyes. Its back faces us, which is ideal. I think if there's any business to be put in, it should be on Jefferson Boulevard, which again, somebody brought up about having a traffic survey, which I couldn't agree with more because they're building so many houses back behind us, and the traffic on Jefferson is just been getting worse and worse every year I've lived here. And with all the houses coming in behind us and adding more traffic,
30 seconds.
just really really make a big problem for West Sacramento. Let's see what I have here. Okay, I'm just looking at my notes real quick here. Where's that one thing I wanted to say? It would be nice if they could put something that would enhance the neighborhood and not devalue it. That would be huge. So I'm begging you, please do not put this project in. If you're going to put something in, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Is there anyone else on the phone who has not had an opportunity to speak yet that would like to make any comments or say a few words? I'm going to
say one more thing. He commented that there were these types of units all over the world, but this is West Sacramento. This isn't all over the world. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renner. Generally, we'll probably not go round the robin here. And the reason is we still have another round to hear from the appellant and the applicant and staff and the commission. This is a lengthy process, and we do want to hear everyone, and we want to give everyone the opportunity to speak and to respond to comments. So last call for phone-in comments from anyone we have not heard from previously. Okay, thank you. Those were all very good comments. I was definitely taking notes and scribbling down, as I'm sure all the other commissioners were doing. So we've now heard the appellant's presentation, the applicant's presentation, public comments, and now I would like to give the appellant an opportunity to respond to comments or testimony provided. And I would love to keep this less than 10 minutes, as we have already heard numerous comments repeated. And I would encourage folks at this point to just say echo a prior comment rather than reiterate, but if you would like to reiterate, definitely go with that. But if you can keep it also under 10 minutes, that would be great.
Oh, so am I the appellant? This is Leanne Hicks.
Yes, Ms. Hicks, you are the appellant.
Okay, yeah, I hope I don't take 10 minutes, and I hope that the designer doesn't take 10 minutes either. I just appreciate everybody's comments. It's a very professional meeting. Obviously we're really upset, that we weren't notified. Only 500 feet away, people were notified. We're a little upset too that the recommended action was to deny the appeal. So I know I mentioned before that we would like for you to reconsider and to not go forward and not approve it at this meeting, to really have everybody look at this. And, we want a city council meeting. And this is not an urban area. And I think pretty much everything was summarized, we're not happy with this project. One thing is, the work live loft maybe is a great idea for San Francisco, but not for here. And I know work live lofts were built by the city, like on 3rd and C Street, and they have not been working. So we are concerned that these are going to be people that, in most cases, the apartments, they're not owners, they're not property owners, they're just renters. And they may not have the pride of ownership or really care. And I'm just really concerned with the economics of it, that's just kind of not even thought about, like, oh, that's just up to the developer to decide whether or not they can make ends meet or not. Again, we're really concerned with the community aspect of this, that there's no community aspect of this. And
the commercial across the street they have empty slots. How are they going to fill these?
oh, there's also other vacant commercial spots across the street. So, I just love what the neighbors had to say. I want to thank you all. Of the 46 neighbors, not all of them were able to speak today, but I really appreciate that all our neighbors came together. It's unfortunate that, we just had to knock on people's doors or tell people to find out about this. And that we really would like more to be looked into this and really think about it. I really like where they say, think about if this was just being built right across the street from you where your children play. We're pretty upset about this. And I like what somebody else said too, that this will reflect on the Planning Commission if you go ahead with it and approve it this evening. It won't be a good reflection. But I want to thank everybody for your time and for the opportunity to speak and for the process that you have here. Thank you so much. I'm sure I forgot something.
Thank you, Ms. Higgs. And so now we'll turn it over to the representative of the applicant, Mr. Ajazi.
Yes, good evening again. In the interest of respecting everybody's time, really don't have any much more to say, as I think I've addressed all the comments that were pertaining to the project. Just a general correction, a lot of people are saying 16 units, they're only 14 units. They're not 16. I've heard that repeated several times. So the actual number is 14. And I heard some comments about parking, that parking is going to be impacted. The project parks itself, in other words, it exceeds actually the required parking for such use. And with that, I'll end my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you everyone for your comments. It's really great to have public input on projects. Typically, we like to see public input as we're developing policy and zoning and projects. But still great to see everyone. So left on this procedure. We'll have an opportunity to hear from staff to clarify some comments made. I'll close the hearing, and then we'll bring it back to the commission for deliberation. So, Kathy, I'm going to kick it back to you. And I've jotted down a couple of comments, but comments that I think it would be good to get clarification on, and I will seek additional comments or questions from the commissioners if they would like you to expand on anything. But the two that I've jotted down that I heard repeatedly, or I think are significant, one has to do with the width of the street and whether or not the street would be widened as part of this development. As the sidewalk goes in, typically, that's in a setback on the east side of the street where there is currently no sidewalk. And it's undeveloped, I can imagine that that may change. So if you could clarify that, and then if you could provide clarification on the number of units, as there seems to be some confusion, and I believe I am in that boat as well. So those are two clarifying remarks that I've heard that it would be good to get some feedback on, and I'd also seek any additional clarifying questions from commissioners.
Okay. In regards to the width of the street, the sidewalk is actually going to be placed on the applicant's property, so the street would not need to be widened to place the sidewalk. And in terms of the number of units, the developer is correct. The actual number is 14. There's 6 live loft units and 8 apartments. I think where they got the 16 number is there is also 2 commercial standalone units underneath the apartments. which makes the total number of uses 16, but the actual number of residential units is 14. And I did want to answer the question about why some neighbors got noticed and others did not. The city is standard practice for projects, notices every property owner within a 500-foot radius of the project site. That's typically what we do for everything, and it's what was done for this one, which I will acknowledge does not encompass that entire neighborhood, but that is what the city's standard practice is for noticing.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Allen. Were there any other remarks that you wanted to clarify?
In terms of the ingress egress, it is required to have the 2 entrances per the fire code. And you will see 2 entrances generally, a minimum of 2 entrances on commercial type projects. And that's why it has the 1 entrance on Linden and 1 on Allen.
Yeah. And Charlie Big, if I may supplement that a little bit, that would also facilitate refuse collection, so that refuse vehicles could come in one way, pick up the load, and then keep going out, rather than having to construct essentially a very large cul-de-sac on the property. There's a few other matters that were raised during the public comment I would like to address. First and foremost is City Council is available. One may submit comments to the City Council under what they call item 1A, which is items not on their agenda. That may be done at any time. A few of the other matters, I'd like to remind the Commission that what's before us here tonight is a ministerial design review application. So it matters of dewatering, solar, CEQA are not on the table tonight. We have a very narrow path on this ministerial design review application, and it really comes down to, does the project meet the applicable, design standards and zoning criteria or not. Much of this has been considered. This property has been zoned commercial at least since the framework plan was done in the circa 1994. It's taken just this long for a project to be proposed on this particular site. General plan is intended to be a self-mitigating general plan in that various matters, be they habitat matters, traffic matters, are accounted for in the general plan. And when projects come forward on the backside of that, that are consistent with the general plan in terms of the development intensity, location, et cetera, is again meant to be a self-mitigating plan. For 14 units, I looked at the ITE trip generation rates. It's about 0.3 trips per unit in the AM and peak hours. It's a very low number relative for the 14 units that are present here. And we are doing design review only. Should note for the Commission, especially for housing element purposes, that we do owe about our allotted amount of housing for the planning period of 2021 to 2029 is about 9,400 units citywide. That's what we have to plan for. And so that is partially what we have accomplished through the general plan, anticipating that is making additional housing sites available. And ultimately, it's up to the market as to what gets built. And even a project of this nature would show you would need to show that it would pencil before it could be financed. So, and that is obviously the case with all projects with private investments proposed. So we want to make sure we're staying within our guideposts here for design review this evening, and that anything outside of that we put aside based on the action that's before you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley. On that note, can before we close the public hearing portion and restrict it to deliberation between the commissioners, can you address there's one component that I don't feel that it's been adequately addressed, the rural design component of the Southport framework plan and the design guidelines, and how that applies or does not apply?
Yeah, this particular site is really at the intersection of three different, zoning districts and character. It is commercial, much like the Power Mart to the east, and then the shopping center that's across Linden over there. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but where Lanises is. That's all commercial. Into the neighborhood on the west would be on the west side of Allen is single family residential. And then there's a handful of 1 acre lots just on the south side of this particular property that are zoned rural residential. So really Linden there is also, as you cross Linden and keep heading southbound, is really where you start to approach what we generally refer to as the rural core. We'll recall, some commissioners may recall when we were doing that cell tower project on the property next door to Power Mart, how that seemed to be the kind of logical break between the more suburban area and the rural area, and hence that's where the water tank design came with some of the mural that's on the side of that water tank. So we are in an area where three zoning districts sort of converge together, but this is really not quite in the rural core like you would see further south off of Davis Road and areas like that. Not to push, but so that's a general. Generally speaking, it sounds like we have overlapping design guidelines, but as what applies here, what would apply here would be what would apply here would be the commercial design guidelines in the framework plan, because that's how the property is zoned. Can you remind us what that description is? Yeah, the underlying zoning here is commercial. That was one of the land use designations that we collapsed together with the general plan in 2016. The same way the site across the street is zoned, as well as where the Power Mart is. Those are all commercial properties aligned for retail, and under current general plan, they provide the opportunity for mixed use as well. I'm sorry, I didn't ask the right question on that one. What I was going for was regarding the design guidelines that are applicable for the commercial mixed use, and how that relates to the rural characterization that is in the Southport framework. Well, the framework plan, the design guidelines address numerous land use types. It goes from the agricultural to the industrial and everything in between. And then it has some specific sections in there for small commercial centers, and then it also has some for the larger commercial centers like the town center, like where Nugget is. The smaller one would be a better example of what was done across the street, where the Lanises and the Vet is. That one includes the plaza, it includes the Main Street area. Those are design components that were built into that particular project. That site is much larger and was much more, had the ability to accommodate those things, reasonably. This site here is much, much smaller and is really being proposed as a singular unit rather than a multi-tenant center like you would have across the street. Thank you. So commissioners, I'm keeping the public hearing open at the moment so we can ask staff
any clarifying questions. As soon as I close it, it's deliberation with commissioners. So would anybody, Mr. Leonard, I'm sorry, I just now saw your hand.
No, I just put it up because I didn't want to interrupt the discussion that you and David were having. So I do have 2 questions for clarification of staff. The first is with Mr. Tilley, you articulated what our purview is as a commission. Of course, I'm trying to struggle with the same question that Chair Liebig asked, and it has to do with the Southport Framework Plan. The commercial design guidelines don't offer much in terms of style. There's plenty of design guideline as it relates to building form and massing and how many unit heights and things like that, but not when it comes to color and character and things of that nature. So that's the area where I'm trying to get to as I analyze the appeal, fully understanding that a lot of the concerns brought up by residents are well outside of our purview here. But really, I want to narrow down and get very specific. What is our leeway to express or analyze the design style alternatives that might be available here, completely separate from dewatering and environmental issues and things of that nature?
I'll start on that, and I may ask our city attorney to weigh in a little further as well about the purview question. The design guidelines that we have were part of the framework plan done, and they were essentially approved first 25 years ago now, or thereabouts. They're not especially detailed, and that does make this a little more challenging. But that was also done intentionally to provide some flexibility for designers to come up with projects that make sense and can ultimately get built. They were deliberately put together to not be overly prescriptive. Now, it's a fine line between being too loose and too prescriptive, but they chose to go a little more toward the loose direction, and that's what we have been operating off of ever since. It is challenging with their age and maybe not quite aligning with current ways of doing things, but they are what we have, and we do our best with them. But you're right, they are not especially detailed, and that was done intentionally by the authors of that plan way back when.
And can we confirm, either Kathy or David, that this property is not subject to any commercial CC&Rs or anything else like that, the way the residences are, even though they're one street over?
I'm not aware of there being CC&Rs on this property, but those would typically be private and not something that the city would enforce.
Thank you.
The city would enforce only its own municipal code.
Thank you. That's all my questions for staff right now.
Okay. Thank you. Just as a reminder, in the process and the way this is going, and I understand that this is very linear with some back and forth, but this is a very prescriptive process as outlined, sort of unlike other processes we go through. And the public comment period has ended, and we may call on the appellant or the applicant for clarifying comments or questions only, but we're not going to reopen it up for general comment. It is back with the commission at this point. I'm going to go on to Ms. Sablon.
So I think my question also kind of goes at both of the other commissioners' questions. And so in the Southport design guidelines, there's the community facilities guidelines. Is that something we could use in this circumstance to give us some discretion? Because it does say that we could deem as other uses deemed appropriate by the Planning Commission. So what kind of discretion do we have there? So it also talks about the Spanish Mediterranean aesthetic in that in those requirements. So
yeah, community facility, the last time we sort of grappled with that in terms of design, but also use, was the times when the commission considered the assisted living project that's still pending over at Jefferson and Gateway. The commission considered that to be a community facility, that since it was on mixed use land at that time, and it was a, intended to be sort of a quasi-public kind of facility. This here tonight, not quite in that vein, in my estimation. This is a little more straightforward commercial project, with a residential component as well. So from a staff point of view, we would treat this as being a commercial project.
And then also in the general concepts in the design guidelines, there's language in there about architecture and themes. Is there discretion in there to use anything in the concepts and objectives in the framework?
Well, those are what we, this is the struggle we've had for quite a while now, is the framework plan has gotten a little bit, dated, at this point in time. And so we try to, apply the core tenets of that document under as best we can in 2020 as they're prepared. But they were written then. One of those core tenets was to allow some design freedom for projects and flexibility to those designers, so that they were not being overly prescriptive. And that's a philosophical thing. Some design guidelines are extremely prescriptive. In this particular case, the decision was to not make them that prescriptive at all.
Okay, so does that mean we have some discretion?
Well, we have, fairly little, latitude here because we are in a ministerial design review situation. And when our design review ordinance was first adopted, which was now probably about 15 years ago, it was really set up to try to be as objective as possible. And so does the project, meet the criteria or not? That's why we've never established a separate design review commission, many other communities have. And we want, even though design review is somewhat inherently subjective, by doing it in this manner, we try to make it as objective as possible, and thus be also, ministerial in nature.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I know I'm kind of being a dead horse with that one. But so we also heard a lot on the environmental concerns, and as you've said, it's exempt from CEQA as a ministerial project. Can you just speak to a little bit of what the applicant will have to do to comply with the condition for the YOLO Habitat Conservation Program?
Yeah, they will. There's some documentation they will need to fill out, and there may be some what they call avoidance measures, AMMs, that may be applicable, such as maybe a pre-construction survey, things of that nature. We need to run through that checklist, but that's part of our municipal code now. It's in Title 20, I believe. So this site, looking at it, especially with the Habitat Conservancy's own database, considers this to be urban land. So we would not anticipate them owing any habitat fees for this project, but there may be a few steps they'll need to take pre-construction.
Thank you. No further questions for me.
All right, thank you. Any other commissioners? Questions before we close the hearing?
I'd like to just briefly echo what David was saying as far as the purview of the commission here tonight, if I may, Chair Liebig.
Yes, and I believe you get to talk even if I close the hearing. So.
I believe I do. I just would like to not interrupt your deliberations once you get into it. So I figured I would jump in right now. And so the decision before you tonight is whether or not to uphold the decision of the community development director to approve the design review for this project. And when this ministerial approval was before the community development director, the criteria for approving the design review, as David said earlier, are very narrow. And so the question becomes whether the objective criteria for design review under the Southport Framework Plan have been met. And so as you see in the staff report, staff has looked at what the standards are and contrasted that with what the project provides. And so your review is fairly narrow here. And so that's where you should be looking to see whether the design review criteria have been met. And so while a lot of other topics were brought up here tonight, really this is a very narrow decision about whether the design review standard was met and whether the ministerial approval was validly granted by the community development director. That's all I've got on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I am going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for deliberation and just kind of reiterate a couple things. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but what we are looking at is the design review and that part only. The project itself is permitted. That's also why it did not come before the commission prior to this evening. The project itself is permitted, and it's been permitted for quite a while. I do want to hit on a couple of the environmental topics. As I could understand, it's probably confusing and certainly not clear. There was an EIR that was done for this area as a whole, and when it was zoned, that environmental document was complete. That included environmental and traffic and all the other studies that go along with it. CEQA then, as this process, the city considers whether or not this project falls within the overall project that was described or the zoning that was described in the EIR. And the determination was that this falls in as permitted as one of those projects. So it's not that there was no environmental done, it's that the environmental was done previously, and this falls in under that, kind of like just speaking generally. There was a mention of an endangered species, and I really did love all the photos. I just want to point out the species that was noted doesn't exist here. I did want to get that clarified for the record. What's in the photos is a great egret. Those are common, and those are common birds to this area. Although beautiful, and I have them behind my house as well. That's a common species, but there are environmental best management practices and often surveys that have to be done pre-construction or during construction, depending where those are. And that's all general conditions for construction in the city. Those were a couple of the big things. I did want to say, I hear everyone. I understand the concerns. What I do want to iterate is what's before us isn't the project itself, because the project itself is permitted and it's been permitted. What's before us is the design and whether or not it meets the specific intent of the design standards. So I just want to kick off that as part of our deliberation. And Commissioner Berliner has her hand up, so I'm going to go. Over to her first.
Thank you. It took me a really long time to find that button, but I just want to echo what Russ has said and just thank everybody who came out or got online and told us what was going on, told us your side and just your thoughts and everything. But I think I'm hurt, because the guidelines are so vague, I'm sort of the opinion that I think we should approve the design, but I hear what everyone's saying and I don't know what, I just want to say thank you. I don't know what else to say. But yeah, that was that. I just wanted to say thank you on that. I think that we should approve the guidelines or approve the design, excuse me. Thanks.
Just to clarify again, this did not come to the commission for approval of the design.
I'm suggesting that
we're either, what we're doing tonight is upholding the appeal or denying the appeal. And unfortunately, that is the only decision we get.
No, that's what I'm saying. Sorry.
And also, I do plan on mentioning this at the conclusion, no matter what the vote is. This is the final stop for the city on the decision. This does not get appealed to city council. If it goes beyond this body, it gets appealed to court. And I will, I'll bring that up at the end as well. Not to be overly harsh, but we are the appellate body on this one. So, Mr. Castillo.
I guess I need a little more clarification that if we do support the appeal, this goes back to city staff to work with the applicant on a different design or what, how does that work? Or, I mean, I guess, yeah, and then I have some comments, but I'm trying to understand that process. I understand that if we don't support the appeal, that's the final decision. But if we do support the appeal, we find that, you know, whatever design, the design didn't follow the same guidelines or whatever. I mean, what's the process after this if we do support the appeal?
Well, putting aside, Kathy, I'll get this one. Putting aside, anything having to do with court, if the commission were to grant the appeal tonight, then if the applicant wanted to pursue a project there, then they would need to essentially go back to square one and submit a new design application and go through the process again.
Okay. Thank you. I do have some comments too. I don't know if I can share those now or.
No, go for it. You've got the stage.
Okay, cool. And I understand that the design guidelines are not overly prescriptive for a reason, right? It comes, the way I see it though is that when it comes to certain developments in other neighborhoods that have come before us, for example, this one didn't because it's permissible. But when it comes to other designs that we've looked at or other developments that we've looked at in other neighborhoods, we take a very close look when considering those developments, particularly on the architecture and design, to make sure that it fits that specific neighborhood. And I think much of what's being built here in West Sac, we all know looks the same. It fits within that specific neighborhood. The architecture and the theme guidelines that are outlined in those framework plans specific to each neighborhood are very important when it comes to these developments, right? Because we want to make sure that it kind of fits within that neighborhood. And to me, this design doesn't really express anything other than what we usually see, and that's a cookie cutter aesthetics, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there was many comments that have been said that it's beautiful and it's modern and it fits within the city of West Sacramento. But to me, this type of development and its intentions obviously work, but it has the potential of also being fitting within a community, but I don't believe that the design fits within this neighborhood. And it's not, and it's obviously clear that this is not what the neighborhood wants. Setting that aside though, I think that if we take the same development and design and, or for instance, if we take some single family homes that want to be built next to the barn or the foundry, it's not something that we would allow because it doesn't fit within that framework or that neighborhood, right? Or if we take this specific design and put it in Bright or Broderick, and Washington District being a neighborhood within itself, not just one parcel, we have the opportunity to build a neighborhood around that with these similar theme and architecture that kind of has Capitol Yards and the Washington District. This is one parcel with a modern look that doesn't fit the rest of the architecture in that neighborhood. So I'm having a hard time just understanding, I guess Commissioner, one of the commissioners asked this, I'm having a hard time understanding kind of what, if we support the appeal, I support the project and I understand that the project is acceptable. And I think the community members that testified today understand that the project may be acceptable and they're good with that. But I think we could do a better job, and I know the staff has worked really hard on this, in finding a way to encourage a development within a specific neighborhood that kind of fits the framework of what that neighborhood's all about. The architecture, kind of the themes, right? And I'm not sure we did that with this specific plan, simply because the guidelines are not overly prescriptive. Those decisions were more subjective on what the staff thought was the appropriate development or design for that specific space. So that's just some of the comments that I wanted to share. This one's a hard one for me, just because a lot of the other developments that have come before us, where we really do take the architecture and design into serious consideration, and even, go to as far as picking the type of color and the type of material that's used for those specific designs to ensure that they fit within that neighborhood, because we want it to look and have a similar feel. And while this project didn't come before us, I don't think it meets those expectations from the community and many of the from the community. So those are some of the comments that I wanted to share.
Chair Liebig, can I comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Castillo. Vice Chair Austin.
Yeah, so thank you. I really appreciate folks taking a substantial amount of time out of their day, even if we're just doing this from the comfort of our own homes or offices, to participate today. And I definitely think that this is a neighborhood that's been able to mobilize, and I think that you'll be able to do some really great things, in taking action with your neighbors. And I'd love to see that move forward. So that all being said, I am satisfied with staff recommendation, and I think that the presentation and the information from the presentation detailed in attachment 7 really address a lot of the concerns that have been raised about this project. And I'll also note, I'm not totally convinced that the concerns raised by neighbors are within the purview of today's discussion. So the issues that have been raised are allowable as the project is currently designed. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I just want to provide a little bit of context. One is our community is changing, and many communities are changing, and that's impacted by two major things. One is, in case you haven't noticed, there's not enough housing in California. And as Mr. Kelly indicated, we in our city are trying to come up with over 9,000 housing units over a pretty short period of time. So we really have a responsibility to meet what's called our regional housing needs assessment, which is not determined by the city council or the planning commission. It's really determined at the state level. The other thing that I think we're really trying to address is this climate change issue. So we need to have density. And I totally hear folks with their concerns about cars, but really we have to have more housing in a smaller area. This is not a West Sacramento thing. If you go to pretty much any other city in our state, communities just like ours are grappling with this. And so you are going to see communities that are going to look different. And we have to do this to address creating enough housing for all of the residents of California and to help address some of our climate change goals through things like infill and dense development. So it's not that the city staff or the council or the planning commission are trying to do something that's detrimental to your community. It's something that our entire state is really endeavoring to address. I thought about not saying something, but I want to say these issues that people are raising, that an apartment is going to lead to crime and homelessness, is really unfounded. And I'm kind of taking offense at it. So I really want you to think long and hard that, because a person rents, and these are going to be very good looking live work lofts, these are something that we should be proud of. And certainly apartments and renters in and of themselves do not add blight or crime to our community. So we really have to change the script on that, because I want to live in a city that is inclusive for people, that people don't feel targeted or judged because they are renters and not property owners. And so with that, I want to say one thing actually for the developer. In Sacramento, it's really challenging to build, to pencil out something besides a wood frame 4-story construction. So just something to think about. If you're only adding 2 units for a 5th story, it's just something to rethink. But I'm not going to, you know, I wouldn't include that in my design review. It's just something that you might want to think about. And making a modification like that could address some of the community concerns just by taking it down by one story. So just something for you to think about. I also hope that the designers are hearing a desire for this to be integrated in some way to the community. And I think that there's a lot of discussion how this isn't happening, but I see the walking path as a really great way to do that. And if there's some substantial commitment to beautification, public art, landscaping, I think that could really go a long way to making it received well in this community. I'm very familiar with this particular neighborhood. It's where it is. Again, there's childcare across the street, and it's between a popular cafe and a popular park. And so it is exactly where someone would walk from the park to the cafe and back again. And so making sure that this is something that's really integrated into our community and something we can be proud of. I really want to make sure that that's being considered. But again, I support staff recommendation on this particular proposal.
Thank you, Ms. Austin. Any other comments from commissioners? Deliberation. Mr. Leonard, yes.
Could I have a city attorney just say one more time? Give me one sound bite. In your words, what our purview is. Are we able to approve or deny based on design style alternatives, or is it strictly approving or denying a prior decision based on all available guidelines?
Your decision cannot be based on subjective things such as designs and potential alternatives. You're limited to the objective criteria, considering the objective criteria that the community development director looked at when coming to this decision.
So if I wanted to evaluate the architectural compatibility of this structure with the surrounding neighborhood, I'm hearing that that's outside of our purview to be able to do.
That's outside of the scope here because that's not part of the objective guidelines that factor into a design review.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. So that's the challenge that I have as a commissioner here. I see very clearly that in my mind, the architecture of this proposed structure does not fit with the adjacent neighborhood. Now, I like the architecture of the building. I live in a neighborhood that has that type of architecture. So I'm a huge fan, just not in that spot. However, my opinion about that matter is not what is, under the umbrella of what we're making a decision on here. The other issues brought up by the residents as it relates to traffic and environmental questions are all things that I understand from when you're trying to protect your neighborhood that matter to you. But these land use, this zoning and this land use was all in place, probably all put in place at the same time your houses were built or that neighborhood was built, if not shortly after. So what is allowed to go in those empty spaces has been predetermined. So we're not here to be able to talk about any of those things. And I know many of the other commissioners have said that, but it's a tough spot to be in, sitting here, seeing the disconnect between that architectural character and then also seeing all of the concerns about traffic and environmental issues are not even within the scope of what we're legally able to make decisions on. So we're towing a very fine line here, each of us individually, as we struggle to understand both the zoning issues, staff's decision, our legal discretion, and the concerns of the residents. It's not an easy place to be in. So no matter which way the vote goes here tonight, there will be a lot of people on either side that are not happy. But we also have to respect the framework in which we're operating here. And there's a lot of legal framework in which we're operating that maybe a lot of the residents from the neighborhood weren't fully aware of on how they apply or don't apply in this case. So the decision here is not an easy one. And, while I started this out by saying, yes, I acknowledge that the context, the character of the architecture is different from the neighborhood. That is not a basis by which I can make my decision. So that is where I'm at right now. And I won't take up anyone else's time repeating anything else anyone else said, but I would be prepared to move ahead, just signaling to the rest of the commission unless any commissioners have any further questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Ms. Sablon, I saw that you had your hand up and then it went down.
Yes. So, I mean, what Commissioner Castillo said and Commissioner Leonard, I struggled with the same thing and looked through the design guidelines and looked for where it said it had to look like the neighborhood. And I didn't see that in there. And so, yeah, our hands are tied in this, I think, even if we don't think the design fits the neighboring parcels. So I've definitely heard what all the neighbors had to say and heard your concerns. And this is our purview here is really narrow. And I think that's what we have to decide on. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to wrap up and I want to echo a couple comments, but first I want to applaud the community for coming out, commenting, and making this work. This is our first time doing this. And I think it went well. We definitely had our challenges, but I want to thank you for making this work and staying respectful, because it's very easy to not be respectful when you're in the virtual realm. So want to just emphasize how much I appreciated your involvement this evening. I echo both Commissioner Leonard's and Commissioner Austin's comments, and I recognize that they're conflicting, and they're conflicting because this is an easy one. I also see great opportunity with this project. I agree that I think there are issues with our aesthetics on it, but I struggle to find the evidence that points to it not meeting our city policy. Another reason that this is difficult, several of us know this neighborhood. I know this neighborhood really well. I know neighbors in the neighborhood. We all live in this community. We see each other in the grocery store. I grew up with the family of some of the members that are with us on the Zoom call tonight. We're all part of this community. We care. It's a difficult decision because of a lot of the factors that the commissioners have brought up. I just want to point out, we also owe it to the property owner the right to develop the property as legally described. And so I have that in the back of my head as well. So where I agree with the project, I think it's a good project, and I think there are benefits to this, like the added sidewalks that will go in, the improved lighting on the corner, because that corner has poor lighting and safety issues, and the added sidewalk and a community beneficial commercial area. I can see benefits to it. I also see the concerns, but I agree with Mr. Leonard's assessment on this one. So with that, I'm going to call the vote and just request if we or I need to just remind, if we do not go staff's recommendation, you must provide findings as well with your motion. So I'm sorry, public comment is closed at this time. We're going to motion. So.
I will move staff's recommendation to deny the appeal.
Moved by Commissioner Sablon.
And I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Austin. Mr. Clerk, can you please do a roll call vote on this one?
Commissioner Leonard?
Aye.
Commissioner Sablon?
Aye.
Commissioner Austin?
Aye.
Commissioner Berliner?
Aye.
Commissioner Vu?
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo?
Based on the very narrow scope before us today, aye.
Chair Liebig?
Okay, thank you. The decision of this planning commission to deny the appeal, Ms. Hicks, and affirm the community development director's decision to approve the design review application for this project. Our decision constitutes the city's final decision on the matter. Ms. Hicks, you may actually seek judicial review of this decision pursuant to section 1094.6 of the California Code of Civil Procedure. Okay, that concludes this item. I think I'm just going to pause just a moment as we move to the next item on the agenda. Realize this was a very lengthy one. The remaining items on the agenda will most likely move much quicker, especially since the next item is a continuance. So that is it for this one. The public portion on the Zoom call will end because this was a very specific hearing that allowed for that. The next one doesn't. So. Okay, moving on, and I do hope to be efficient with this one, or the next three items on the agenda. So the next is item number 4, public hearing regarding the proposed Kind Project multifamily development, Washington specific minor deviations, development agreement, and consideration of Planning Commission Resolution 10-13 PC. Before I kick it to you, Ms. Allen, Mr. Clerk, do we have any comments on item number 4?
We have no comments on this item.
All right, thank you. Ms. Allen.
Staff is requesting a continuance of this item. We did not get a chance to get all the planks of the development agreement wrapped up in time to have it ready for you. And so we are requesting a continuance until November 19th.
Okay. We actually need to hear a motion on this one. Ms. Berliner?
I'll move to postpone this hearing till our next meeting.
The move to continue the hearing to the next meeting in November by Commissioner Berliner.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Leonard. Mr. Clerk, seems silly to do roll call on this one, but.
Commissioner Austin?
Aye.
Commissioner Berliner?
Aye.
Commissioner Vu?
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo?
Aye.
Commissioner Leonard?
Aye.
Commissioner Sablon?
Aye.
Chair Liebig?
Aye. Okay, thank you, Ms. Allen. Moving on to item number 5 on the regular agenda, consideration of the Washington specific plan, minor deviations and design review for proposed multifamily at 219 through 221 5th Street. And this belongs to Mr. Laffey, but before we go to it, Mr. Clerk, are there any comments on item number 5?
There was one public comment on item number 5.
Okay. Mr. Laffey, you're on mute.
Yes, good evening, Chair Liebig and members of the commission. This item before you tonight is a request for a Washington specific plan minor deviation and design review for an 18-unit, 3-story building at 219 through 221 5th Street. This is north of C Street. It's behind the garage, and it's adjacent to a project site that you guys recently approved, a townhome project. The property is zoned R3 multifamily, and the site is about 1/4 of an acre in size. And we have a small PowerPoint here. If we can get that loaded up, I can show you the site plan. Mr. Clerk. So this is the site. So this is one of the rare lots in the city that has an alley that we can take advantage of. So there's an alley between this project site and the city-owned garage at the corner of 5th and C. So this project has our parking fronting an alley. And you can see it's a relatively narrow frontage along 5th Street. So it's 3 stories. They're all 1 bedrooms, 9 parking spaces. The deviation before you tonight is to reduce the setback along 5th Street. The required setback in the Washington plan is 20 feet. I do want to make a correction. The staff report mentioned it being 10 to 20 feet. It is a 20-foot setback that's required, so this would be reducing it down to 7 feet. For the building is shown as being 7 feet off the sidewalk there. The building, if you can go next slide. The building is relatively contemporary in nature. It does have a pitched roof to blend in more with the surrounding homes. The materials are white smooth stucco and metal. And all the units have balconies, and the ground floor units have a pretty large outdoor patio area. Next slide. So this is the northern elevation. The previous slide was the southern elevation. So Mr. Clerk, if we can go back to the site plan. So we got one public comment. It was a fairly general public comment about the perceived lack of public transit and walking and biking available in that neighborhood. The city did have a fairly large investment in infrastructure in that neighborhood a few years ago, and that includes bike lanes. So, but they don't go up to this section of 5th Street, but they are in the Washington district. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. This request includes design review. Normally that would not come to the commission, but because they're requesting the minor deviation, the design review is packaged with that. So I'll conclude with that, and I'm available to answer any questions, and the applicant is also available to answer questions, and they would like to introduce themselves as well.
Okay, with that, I will open the public hearing before we do anything on that one. Before we start asking questions or whatnot, Seamus, you indicated that the applicant would like to introduce themselves, but there is no presentation. Okay, absolutely.
Good evening, Chair Liebig and members of the commission. Thanks so much for having us tonight. My name's Emily, this is Michael. And we just wanted to say thank you for having us. And I know it's been a long night, and we're grateful for your input and glad to be here.
Yeah, as Emily said, I'm Michael, just the other half of the design team. Also wanted to say we've had a really good experience with the city of West Sacramento so far. The staff has been really collaborative and helped us get to this point on this project. So we're happy to be able to be in front of you and for your consideration and answer any sort of questions or concerns that come up.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant or city staff from the planning commissioners? I know it's been a long evening. Bear with me. I still have like half dozen screens up. Okay. Go ahead and close. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you so much. It doesn't appear that we have any questions or comments. bring it back to the commission for deliberation. I did, before we jumped into it, I did want to acknowledge the one comment, and it's Gia Wang Connolly. Gia Wang Connolly. And generally positive about the project and focused on transportation and the need for more active transportation. And something I want to echo, this group has been very, very supportive of, and you can see those changes occurring in the Washington area and the neighborhood, especially 5th Street, the improvements there, over on 3rd Street, the improvements there, the improvements that are coming for the railway crossing from a grant that we got in 2018. It was announced that we got that. You know, it just takes time to get these on, but this community is becoming extremely walkable, and I'm definitely looking forward to having this empty lot developed and something to activate this this alleyway. There is an existing alleyway there, and maybe also bring some life. I know this project isn't poised to, but maybe it can be the catalyst for sparking some life on that corner where there's currently the garage. So those are my comments on this project. We are looking at design on this one. So, Commissioner Leonard.
Question for staff on the tree that's at the front. I see the conditions of approval, just that Parks and Rec, conditioned the applicant to do a tree inventory. Can you tell us what will that tree stay, or will it be pruned, or is it proposed to be taken? Do you have any insight on that?
Yes, we did run this project by our city tree administrator. We did not request a tree inventory at this stage because all the trees are relatively small, but that will be needed. And that'll be a decision that is made looking at the tree just off of going out on the site. It looks like it's not in the best shape, but we will get a professional opinion on it and see what the health of the tree is with that tree inventory.
So then when we go to, I presume that some landscaping plan will have to be approved in addition to what, if that tree has to go there, then subject to the landscape design guidelines, the citywide landscape design guidelines that have them needing to plant a tree every 15 or 20 feet on non-residential streets. Is that where that then goes? How is that dealt with in subsequent?
Yeah, so this project doesn't, all projects need to comply with the landscape development guidelines. So that is something that we would review for and plan check. Street canopy trees are needed. So they are showing 3 of them there. We'll check to make sure they're providing the adequate amount for the frontage. 3 per 100 feet, from I recall, it's about what's required. So they're getting there.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure. I see the 2 next to the parking area and then the one right next to the building, and it was unclear if the one next to the building was the existing one or if it was going to be a new planted one in this place. Okay, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
As I say, we strive to keep existing trees if they're healthy and they're in good condition. But if not, then they would need to plant a new one or more if the landscape development guidelines require it.
Okay, thank you.
Seamus, just to maybe save some effort, we've seen this parcel come up before, and back in my earlier years on the Planning Commission, was very passionate about every tree. I'm still passionate about trees, so I'm glad I'm rubbing off a little bit. But a lot of the trees out there are tree of heaven, which are not heavenly. They're often considered a weed. I run past this site also frequently, jogging. And yeah, the tree that we were talking about is a little on the haggard side, but I'll trust the arborist on this one. I want to say it was like a nut tree, but I can't remember.
Yeah, it looks like it. Maybe walnuts.
But rather than spending money on a whole tree inventory, I think you've already got one.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, hearing no other comments, this is when you put in the effort on the design review. No, I think the project looks great. I think it fits into the neighborhood. I'm always a little bit nervous about the corrugated metal, but it's in the neighborhood, and it's by this garage that has been sought to be repurposed multiple times, and I think they're building on that theme too every time I see something. So it seems to fit into the neighborhood, and I'm definitely looking forward to something going on this side of town and activating that street right there. So with that, I'll seek a motion.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Leonard.
Second.
I didn't see who did that. Oh, thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Castillo. Mr. Clerk.
Commissioner Vu?
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo?
Aye.
Commissioner Leonard?
Aye.
Commissioner Sablon?
Aye.
Commissioner Austin?
Aye.
Commissioner Berliner?
Aye.
Chair Liebig?
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Tilley, I think you have to read something on this one. All interested parties.
Yes, all interested parties may appeal. I'm going off memory here, but all interested parties may appeal this action to the Planning Commission within 15 days of tonight's action. And of course, that must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
I think you're taking it to council, but you can appeal to us, but no. No, I didn't mean to catch you off guard on that.
Oh,
okay.
I needed to be doing that.
Congratulations. I really look forward to seeing this lot developed. It has been before us in the past, so best of luck. I'd like to see it go. So go forward.
Yes, thank you.
Next on the agenda is our final item under the regular agenda, the Housing Element Subcommittee report. And of the subcommittee, which is Vice Chair Austin, Ms. Berliner, and Commissioner Sternfels, we have Commissioner Berliner and Vice Chair Austin with us to provide an update.
I'll go first, and I'll defer to staff to provide a timeline. But as we've kind of discussed, there's something of an accelerated timeline. I think that the Planning Commission is going to receive this item before the end of the calendar year. And I'll just note that I would recommend, and I think that Commissioner Sternfels would agree too. I would recommend that we read it thoroughly and provide some detailed feedback about the report itself. That being said, I think that the consultants who compiled this did a really excellent job of addressing the many, many things that came up in the workshop that included both planning commissioners and commissioners from the Housing and Economic Development Group. Okay, yeah, I think it's EDAC or something. But yeah, so they took all the commissioners' feedback, and I think that they did a really good job. Something that was important to me was making sure that because we were on this accelerated timeline and the fact that due to COVID, we can't have gatherings in person, that there was a really strong and targeted outreach effort. And so I did ask for a report back on the kind of outreach efforts that they were able to engage in. And during the workshop, the commissioners gave a lot of really great advice and very specific examples of groups that we thought that they should reach out to. And then preceding that effort, the city, I believe, had facilitated discussions with key target stakeholders. So that's my summary. And do you have anything else to add, Aria?
You did a really good summary. I do want to echo Commissioner Austin and what I would assume Commissioner Sternfels would say. Just, it's a very long document, but it is like, there's just, the details are there and you just need to read it and make sure that you can comment. Like, if you have comments on like the smallest of things, it's good to comment on it. So, but yeah, I appreciate city staff and the Housing and Economic HEDAC, yeah, for all their hard work and for being such gracious hosts at their meetings.
Yeah, so real quick, just to follow up with Commissioner Austin's remarks about the schedule. We will be workshopping it with you at our next Planning Commission meeting, and given that the document is a little lengthy, we are endeavoring to get that to you a little bit earlier than when your normal packet comes out. And then our intent right now would be to come back at your first December meeting in the hearing format and try to see if this is going to be something that we're ready to move forward, that night, because otherwise we'll come back the next time on December 17th, but it's mostly just because of the time of the year we're in that we really are trying to do this a little faster than we would really prefer.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you both for the extra work going to these extra meetings and reading the document, but it is coming to all of us, so you do have a heads up or head start. So, and I look forward to your summary when we actually get the document as well. So, with that's
for you all. You're going to have to read it on your own.
That concludes our regular agenda, and we'll take it to informal discussion.
So when can we update the design guidelines for commercial in Southport?
I'd love to, trust me. I really would.
Does that feel like a good 2021 project? Oh, actually, Mr. Tilley, because we do have a lot of newer commissioners, do you want to, I don't know if this is clear, we've been focusing on when you would want to reapply as a planning commissioner, but do you want to talk about when people get sworn in and we elect officers? I don't know what to call that.
Chair and vice chair and secretary.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to elect me anymore, thank goodness. However, typically our first meeting of the calendar year, whenever that ends up being, when all commissioners have been appointed and reappointed, that very first meeting was when we would elect chair and vice chair for next year. So it's largely dependent upon when appointments are made, and that is definitely above my pay grade.
And it may be above your pay grade because we're still waiting the outcome of some of the elections. So, but yes, don't wait if you want to, if you're interested in being serving on the Planning Commission. But just know that we've had situations where it's been delayed. Like, I think sometimes we don't have like a full commission, and with officers or whatever we're called until like February sometimes. So sit tight.
Yeah, that's the time of the year, makes that, more challenging. And I know the council takes it very seriously who they appoint. So it does take a little while.
Though I'm hopeful that your pay grade is actually much higher because I know what they make. So
you guys make 6.7 cents an hour. 6.7 cents an hour is what shows up on my timesheet that Ben is hopefully now all entering for you guys.
They're done.
Thank you, Ben.
And I just want to thank Ben too for doing a really excellent job today. Today was we were figuring some things out on how to do a public hearing with so many participants via Zoom. And I think that there are some good learning opportunities, but all in all, I really appreciated everything. And I think that Chair Liebig and Mr. Mirajwak, I always mess that up. I think you did a really good job of facilitating. So thank you.
Yeah, I echo that, Ben. This was not an easy one. I think there are a lot of lessons learned from what we went through this evening. As I don't think anyone anticipated public being on the actual Zoom component. That was new, a little bit of a surprise in the middle of the meeting, and so I think it was handled well. We did have some hiccups, but going forward, if we do stick to this virtual life for long, I am certainly open to mechanisms to allowing public comment, but I definitely think we need some improvements and some controls in place. But I appreciated everyone tonight, including the community, really for staying respectful. So, all right. If there is no other informal discussion, thank you all for your effort. I know it was a long evening, and I will close tonight's the Planning Commission meeting. Thank you.
Great night, everyone.
Have a good night. Bye.
Good night, everyone.